and you might be able to fill in a couple of gaps. Zach and Barry have known each other for quite a while. Zach, you're very or relatively familiar with GradeCraft. I can't remember whether you have a demo account or not.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So, Zach, you're familiar with GradeCraft. My understanding is that you brought us to Illini Cloud's
correct,
and thought that we'd be a good conversation partner to.
Yeah, and the whole gist of it. There's a couple. Well, keep going. I mean, our notes are matching.
So Barry gave me sort of just cursory context, not a whole lot more than that. That Illini Cloud provides IT services, infrastructure, and support for a bunch of districts and schools within the state of Illinois. It looks like from the website you're branching out beyond Illinois.
Oh yeah. New York, Nebraska, Wisconsin. I think Las Vegas.
Yeah, so we're in a charter management organization in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, called CEI. We're loosely affiliated with the Ricks and BOCES in New York, RIC 1. Also Illinois, Illini Cloud, Wisconsin, WISNet, Nebraska, with the ESU coordinating councils, the Clark County school districts. Scambia is coming on board. So Illini Cloud is the flagship organization that kind of leads the K-12 Federation, which are all the groups that I just mentioned are part of. In addition to the services that you mentioned about Illini Cloud, with respect to infrastructure, DR, et cetera, storage, we also have a collection of services that are centered around identity and access management and single sign-on, data and interoperability, as well as a presentation layer for, orchestration of teaching and administration experiences on a personalized level, as well as, lastly, student data privacy. So I know we're focused on GradeCraft, so I'll pause there or stop there and let you keep going.
Awesome. I think that begins to answer some of my questions. I'll have a bunch of technical questions probably at the end based on how the demo goes. But does it make sense to everyone that I start with the demonstration and go from there?
There's a couple other items here, and so which kind of periphery or whatever, but it's the one part that Barry and I have talked about is that my school and many others, it's kind of in flux, with standards-based grading.
Right.
And that really, and I tested this out at one of our professional development, it's called Teacher Feast, thefeast.org. So I tested this out with some of the teachers as a PD, and that worked fairly well. And I even used it with some students. And so it was one of those things that was like, there's some great parts in there. Definitely, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but I also know that Barry sees that if this is going to K-12, that it's really going to have to have some type of metamorphosis in its placement in K-12. It just doesn't match up very well in that environment. And so that's a whole nother, connection, but also getting this, if they're able to connect and have this be within the K-12 Federation and Illini Cloud, then that really opens up a lot of schools and a lot of opportunities. And I keep mentioning this, and I know Jat, this is one thing that just sticks with me all the time. And I know Barry was concerned about it being in Michigan, is the student privacy laws.
Right.
And so that is a huge part. That's a foundational piece of what Illini Cloud and the K-12 Federation does is making sure that student data is private. So I just wanted to mention those pieces before going on to the demo. That gives you an idea of kind of where I see things going. But getting it up on within the platform, I don't think would be difficult. Changing how GradeCraft is used in K-12, that's a whole nother beast.
Right.
A whole nother beast. So I think we just one step at a time here. So I think, and I think Jat is going to see a product that I think you're going to see some benefits to this, Jat, and that's why we're doing it.
Well, so a quick question for you, Jat, is how familiar are you with gameful pedagogy, or what we mean by gameful learning?
I'd say I'm probably a little farther along than middle of the road.
Okay.
Certainly I'm not a Zach, but hope to get there someday.
Okay.
No more than one Zach on this earth.
Oh, you can't say that because my son's name is Zach.
Well, is he a Zach or a Zach?
He's Zach.
Z-A what?
C-H.
Oh, see, that's Zach. I'm sorry.
Oh, Zach. That's what you said. Yeah, he is a Zach.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, my dad named me Z-A-C-K. There's no Z-A-C-H. There's no Zach. Sorry, just had to get that out there.
I understand. I'm Rachel.
I do. These acts got to stick together. Moving on, Rachel.
Okay.
Okay.
So what we gameful learning is an attempt to really tap into what we know about learner motivation and the critical role engagement plays in supporting student learning. So really, we need learners to engage in the hard work that they need to do for learning to happen. And when they're only doing that through intrinsic motivators, they're less likely to really deeply engage. They're more likely to just do what they need to do to satisfy their instructor, their teacher, their mentor, whatever it is, as opposed to really having an intrinsic drive to engage in that hard work. So one place where we all see people deeply engage in a learning environment is actually when people play games, and in particular video games. People play those games because they're hard, not despite the fact that they're hard, which is often how students approach school. They will do it despite the fact that they don't enjoy it and it's really hard, only because of those extrinsic motivators. And so when you look at people play video games, they're learning social norms, they're learning how to interact with an interface, they're learning a language, the language of the game, they're learning the rules of the system, they're actually beginning to learn systems thinking. And these are all things that we really love to see learners in traditional learning environments do. And so we approach our course design, lesson design, learning experience design from the standpoint that what are the design principles, the philosophies, the beliefs that go into the creation of video games that we can apply to these traditional learning contexts. And some of the fundamentals in that scenario are that students aren't competing with each other for limited number of A's. So we take a very mastery-oriented approach to grading and assessment. And so I'm just going to look at the camera to see just the side of my head, and might be disorienting for you too. We assume that if students put in the effort to learn the material and they demonstrate that learning, that they deserve an A regardless of where they fall in a distribution that that might come out, whether that's a distribution of total points, a distribution of percentage grades, however you want to approach it. But to be able to really enforce that, one of the best ways to do that is to think about video games and how students start out with 0 points and they build upwards. And so all gameful courses flip the frame, as we say, and build up from 0 points. The other things that we know both from the science of motivation and from the development of video games is that giving people choice really drives them to engage. And so we try to foster learners' autonomy by creating different pathways and through a curriculum. And those are two of or I guess that's actually 3 principles. One, that people aren't competing for limited A's, but also that they're building up from 0 and that they also have choice. This is all based on self-determination theory, which is, or largely based on self-determination theory, which is a theory of motivation that comes out of University of Rochester. And so designing these courses may not need a special technology, but we've discovered that it's really complicated for instructors to manage these courses where some students are doing some assignments, others are doing different assignments without some specific technology, and that learners themselves get really confused about where they are in terms of reaching their goals and how to make decisions about what assignments to engage in. So I want to pause and apologize for the party that is apparently going in next door in the conference room to my office. I don't know whether you guys can hear it or not, but they're rabble rousing in there or something. So that's sort of that is the theoretical framework and the philosophy that we brought to the development of GradeCraft. So I'm going to actually switch courses and then set up screen sharing. So feel free to interrupt with questions if you have them while I'm dealing with the technology.
How long has GradeCraft been in use, and kind of what are the flagship or larger implementations?
Right, so GradeCraft's been in use on campus since 2012. We have mostly been in use only at University of Michigan over that time. In the last year and a half, 2 years, we've begun to pilot use cases at other institutions. So we have one K-12 user at the moment, Trailside Elementary in Virginia. I think it's Trailside Middle School because it's a 7th grade social science class, social studies class. And then in terms of, there's also an implementation at University of Michigan Dearborn, which has both traditional courses, but also they are doing a student success professional development program where students will participate and engage in the GradeCraft site over their entire tenure at University of Michigan Dearborn. So whether that's they transfer there after community college, 2 years, or whether they're there for 4 years, it's a very different model that we've seen, and we've begun to sort through how GradeCraft works or doesn't work for that particular framework.
Great. What kind of K-12s are you looking for?
There's a couple different answers to that question. So we know that, we designed GradeCraft specifically for the higher education space, and specifically even for R1 institutions, right? Like student institutions like Michigan, simply because that's what we knew. We're looking to, we're doing a pilot with a high school in Chattanooga starting next year, where all of their science classes will use GradeCraft and their special education curriculum will use around study skills and life skill development will use GradeCraft. So that's one of our K-12 pilots that we'll be running next year. Additionally, we're launching as a commercial product as of June 1st. And so we've had some limited use in the paid beta. We gave it out to a few institutions for free last year. We launched a paid beta this past January, and then we're going to be a fully commercial, available to whoever wants it, product starting June 1st.
What's the pricing model behind that?
So it's not 100% confirmed, but we are strongly leaning toward. So the pricing model for the beta clearly didn't work for K-12. And so we've revamped the pricing model, and $60 for 2 course sites for 6 months, which is really geared more toward the higher ed purchasers, and then $120 for 10 course sites for 1 year, which is geared more toward the K-12. So assuming that you'd want a different course site for each of your, blocks of time that you're teaching a group of students, we've bundled those together. It essentially breaks down to $10 a month, but this gives higher ed or other, we're not going to do email verification of your institution type. So whatever you want to purchase, you can, but recognizing that most higher ed institutions are going to be on quarters or semesters and not necessarily want to buy a ton of sites for an entire year. But some community college instructors who are teaching 4 loads and want to use GradeCraft in all of their courses would clearly benefit from the $120 purchase. So we've tried to build in some flexibility with that. A couple other pieces of information around the pricing is that instructors and students will always have access to their data so long as GradeCraft is in existence. And so even if the instructor stops paying after 1 year, they can still get back into that course site, download student information, download their assignments. Students can go back in and see their work and their grades and feedback. The instructor just cannot edit the site by adding more students or adding additional assignments or deleting information. So regardless of how long an instructor chooses to purchase course sites, they'll still always have access to their data.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let me, there we go. So the course site that I'm showing you right now is actually Barry Fishman's current video games and learning course. And this is the student view. So when we think about what students need to orient themselves in this relatively non-traditional course design, one thing we know is that it's pretty hard to orient yourself to what's going on at that current moment in time. So we have this upcoming events panel, which centers on the date nearest to today's date in the future. It happens that this particular course has an assignment due tomorrow, and so this upcoming event centers on that. But you can scroll back and see previous events and scroll forward to see what's going on in the near future. So there's an additional due date tomorrow. Of course, our term ends tomorrow, so there's not a whole lot going on in the future for this course. But in addition to that, we want students to be able to see what are the upcoming deadlines. And so we have this course planner in assignments due this week, and it shows all of the assignments that are due in the next 7 days. So it updates nightly as to what's due in the next 7 days. We also, and this doesn't have any data at the moment, partly because we're near the end of the term, but we also have a button where they can click on My Planner, and they can see just the assignments that are due in the next 7 days that they have predicted that they are going to complete. And I'll explain what that means in a little bit.
Now, is this Barry's, are you a student in Barry's class, or is this from Barry's perspective?
This is a student in Barry's class,
okay.
It's a dummy student, so she hasn't actually submitted any assignments. So when I show the course progress panel, you see I've earned 0 points and haven't leveled up at all. I haven't earned any badges this week. I didn't earn any points. And in the box and whisker plot that shows the point distribution for the whole course, you can see this little dot right here, which is not even on the box and whisker plot because I've earned 0 points. So this is what the student sees on their dashboard when they first log in. Just as a side note, Barry can also log into his system from his end, and I can show the instructor viewpoint in a couple minutes, and preview as any student. And so he can go in and see this exact same screen to know what his students are seeing. In case there's, I didn't know that this due date was coming up. My dashboard didn't tell me. He can confirm whether there's a bug or, not that we've ever run into that particular bug, but he can validate what the students are seeing and check on that. So we call GradeCraft a gameful learning management system. We don't actually have all of the features that many learning management systems have. We have many of the features, so we do have assignment submission, we have grading rubrics, and a grading workflow. We don't have a test and quizzing tool, and we don't have a discussion forum. And the reason behind those decisions are that we didn't really see at the time. Our perspective is actually changing as we've been pushing the system and talking to more instructors, a particularly gameful frame on those particular tools. And so the push has really been to make GradeCraft good at doing the gameful things, and assuming that there are other tools that people might plug into GradeCraft or into their more traditional learning management system for their particular learning context.
And Rachel?
Yes.
Yes, so I've got about 7 minutes.
Yes.
Don't worry about me. Jat's, with the conversation and everything. But Jat, what I'm hearing there is that, and I don't know if this can be done or not, but with the other applications within Illini Cloud, maybe is that a possibility that something like this could be connected to other applications?
Yeah, so currently and I don't know how technical either of you are, currently we're LTI 1.0 certified.
Right.
And so the way many instructors do this is they, so Michigan's a campus, but we have a D2L campus and a couple other institutions that are using different learning management systems, that they will add GradeCraft into their navigation bar or navigation system within their traditional learning management system. And they turn off their gradebook so that students aren't confused about how they are progressing through the course. GradeCraft serves as the main gradebook for the students to see. Then the instructors face another choice, which is, are you going to have students submit your assignments through GradeCraft or through your traditional learning management system? And there are reasons to do either one. And so that's usually how people are doing it. We also have instructors that just use GradeCraft for everything, and they use Qualtrics surveys for their tests and quizzes, or they use some other test and quizzing tool, and they use an independent discussion forum for whether that's Yellow Dig or Piazza or something like that for their discussion forums, and have links within assignment descriptions to those tools for their students to access them.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Zach, so we are an IMS Global affiliate partner, and so LTI is not a big deal for us. And yeah, in terms of integrating it with the existing Illini Cloud platform, I don't see that as being a challenge.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, because the more you can make that seamless with other applications, that benefits you as well, Rachel.
Yes. Yes.
You can do that both on the data layer and on the identity layer, right? So
yes.
She's logged in as Katniss Everdeen, right? So as we integrate the identity portion, we could have them log into any of various Illini Cloud supported apps, and when they hit the learning management system, they'd be auto logged in with a rich data set so that GradeCraft would know exactly who the person is, what their entitlements are, what their progress was, where they left off, all that kind of good stuff.
That not only seamless for you, Rachel, but also for the teachers and the students, and that's a huge benefit. Cool.
Right. And so we currently have Shibboleth and SAML authentication built into the system. We're planning on exploring Google single sign-on authentication mechanisms, and since single sign-on is something that you guys already are providing, it would just be a matter of connecting your authentication system with GradeCraft.
Yeah, we use Shib and SAML as well as an ID Connect, so all the social SAML stuff and Google and Office 365, we've got that too. So
cool.
It can come in various ways.
Excellent. So I want to show sort of the more unique features of GradeCraft compared to traditional learning management systems. I alluded to this additive gradebook component where students are building up from zero. And so this is a pretty easy, simplistic grading screen for students to interpret where they are in terms of achievement. So this is very similar to a video game, and I want to pause and just point out that the language on this page and throughout the system is completely customizable. Because Barry is teaching a course on video games and learning, his grading scheme is labeled by video game consoles. We have instructors who just use letter grades. We have instructors who align this language with other types of course content. So we have a course called What is Cancer? And their grading scheme is named based on historical figures in the study of cancer. And so as students are building up their score, they're also learning something about the language of the domain. As students earn points, this gray bar will just begin to fill up. And then as they complete it, the next bar opens up for them to learn or to fill. And so as they earn points, they can just see their progress. They also see this on the dashboard. So I think most students are not logging in or not checking on the grading scheme particularly frequently. It's used early in the course as students begin to get a sense of the leveling scheme, but then they can actually just see their course progress right on the dashboard. The other really sort of the heart of GradeCraft is the grade predictor. So if you're going to give learners choice, you have to give them enough information so that they can make intentional, conscientious choices. And so the way we've thought about that is giving them this grade predictor where learners can go in, predict how many points they might earn on a given assignment. So for attendance, most often it's just 0 or some other number. So you can see Barry actually has 3 levels. He has absent, not all there, that he might award students who either come late, leave early, or he discovers they're, shopping or filling out their March Madness bracket or whatever it is on their screen during class, or he has fully present. So students can use these sliders, and as they do, a blue bar fills up here showing what grade they're predicted to get based on these assignments.
Rachel?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I have to go. Thank you. Keep going. Jat, we can hopefully connect later and then, discuss this further.
Yeah,
great.
No, just ping me and we'll connect up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Say hi
Really
to Barry
appreciate the
for me.
connection.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
This blue bar fills up so that students can see the grade that they're predicted to get. So you can see all of this data right up at the top. This student has not yet submitted any assignments, but if she had, she would have earned some points, and that would show up here as a green bar. And the students would then, those points are no longer predicted, they're in the earned category. There's also this blue hashed bar. We have assignment unlocks built into the system, which means that instructors can set up assignments that are prerequisite for later assignments. And if students choose not to complete that prerequisite assignment, those later assignments don't open up for them. So a student might predict a grade for that assignment. So for example, this gameplay reflection paper, if I predict that I'm going to do perfectly on this, which is sort of absurd, you can see the hash bar increase. And if I had actually submitted the prerequisite assignment, which is this gameplay selection paper, then this hash bar would turn into a solid blue bar. And so that's an indicator to students that they need to do something else beyond just assuming that they will get some points for that particular assignment.
Are there analytics that show
Yes.
predicted performance versus actual performance?
So that's an interesting, we have those analytics. At the end of a course, an instructor could connect with us if they had a desire to do research on that particular question or issue. Right now, we consider those to be really research-oriented analytics because we don't want instructors, we actually hide from instructors what grade a student has predicted they will get on an assignment because we don't want to bias the instructor in their assessment process and in their grading workflow. So although an instructor can preview GradeCraft as a given student, they cannot see what the student has predicted they will get on an assignment. What they can see, though, is whether the student has predicted that they will do that assignment or not.
Gotcha. So there's no real view to see if a student is overly optimistic or pessimistic based upon their predictors?
Not currently. What we've done research on this, and we tend to know that students who come in as strong students tend to underpredict their own performance to create a buffer. I mean, maybe not consciously to create a buffer, but that in underpredicting, that gives them, that means they're essentially planning on doing more work than they would need to reach their goal grade. We also know that students who come in with lower GPAs tend to over-predict how they're going to do on assignments and end up not meeting their own expectations, and therefore tend to not do as well.
Great, thank you.
So given that you're asking about analytics, I want to actually show you briefly what students can see. And these analytics are only turned on when you have more than 30 students enrolled in a course in order to protect student privacy. So it's harder to reconstruct who got what grade if there are 30 or more people in the system. And so that's where we can provide aggregate. That's where our Office of General Counsel has suggested it's okay to provide aggregate data about individual assignments. So if we go into Learning Game Reviews and we go to Learning Game Review 1, it's interesting, Barry doesn't, oh, it may be that because the student is auditing, she can't actually see the analytics. So we can go in and actually show you a clearer view so that you can actually see what the students see in terms of analytics. But students can see what the point distribution on a given assignment was, how many students completed the assignment, and instructors can see all of this as well. And sort of general descriptive analytics about how students performed on the assignment. For assignments that have rubrics, in a large enough class, students can in fact go into the rubric and see how many students met a given level on that rubric. We find that that really helps learners recognize their ownership of the grade that they earned. So you can often hear students say, well, they just graded this really harshly, that I didn't get a good grade, nobody got a good grade. And they can actually see in the rubric detailed how many students hit that just barely almost meets expectations and above and beyond categories, to start to help students realize that they play a role in earning these points, and that in fact many students might be in the meets expectations category, and that there just barely actually is quite outside the norm for what the instructor gave. So just a little bit more about the assignment. So instructors can determine how students can submit that particular assignment and whether it's coming in through GradeCraft or not. So the students can submit, depending on what the instructor sets, links, information into a text box, or upload an assignment. For image files, they can only upload JPEG, PNGs, and trying to remember what the third one, it's not TIFF, it might be a GIF. So as sort of a security precaution, and there's currently a cap on file size of 40 megabytes. So if students are asked to submit a video, we encourage instructors to enable the link and have those students either upload it to Vimeo, YouTube, Google Drive, Box, and just share the link instead of us hosting all of those really large files. Let me pause there and let you ask questions.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was alignment to standards. Did I catch that right, or is there a standards alignment?
There is not a standards module right now. And so that's actually something that is on the roadmap. We have seen people sort of hack the system using badges as different standards to demonstrate to students where they are in those meeting those standards, but we don't have, and you can import your state standards for, you know, 4th grade math, and they're all, you know, that will pre-populate the system for you. That does not exist.
Okay.
Like I said, we designed largely for higher ed, and we're beginning to experiment and begin to see where we want to go to meet the needs of K-12. And that's clearly something that people crave. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great.
Other questions?
In terms of professional development in the commercial offering, what is the professional development methodology and plan for, if you were to bootstrap a group of teachers, kind of how much time commitment does that take? How quick is the learning curve? What kind of support is there post go live?
Right.
Kind of things.
There's multiple options. The free is all of our documentation on our help website, which is help.gradecraft.edu, which is getting, no, gradecraft.com, sorry, don't know where edu came from, help.gradecraft.com. And now that we have more people on the team, Evan thankfully is building out that documentation to really help with that. We are also hoping to, assuming that there is some uptake, have regular sort of open office hours where people can submit questions, video office hours, people can log in, submit questions, and we'll record those and post those to the help page so that people can see it. There's also, so that's sort of the technical answer to your question. We are also setting up a pricing model for either traveling for on-day or on-site training in how to use the system and developing the pedagogy. There's also, or you can pay to have us do live webinars to work through setting up your course site. The learning curve has really, we've seen a pretty wide distribution. Some people get it and we never hear from them again, and they're clearly using the system and we don't hear from their students. I will say we very rarely hear from students about challenges with the system. We have run into, you know, it's less about the base system and more about some of the newer features, like the Canvas sync is not necessarily working perfectly. And we're really, because Canvas continually updates its system and its data structures sometimes, we're running into quirks in that particular integration. But I would say we have mostly been used by early adopters and people who are relatively comfortable with technology, or at least with the idea of experimenting. The harder thing for people, at least in the higher ed space, to get their brain around, I think K-12 actually is far ahead in this respect, is the idea of a mastery orientation, and that grades don't have to be used for sorting students, but can be used to demonstrate different learning achievements. And in the higher ed space, that is foreign to some instructors. And so getting their mind around that is a bigger challenge. There's also, which is less about the tool and more about the pedagogy, but Barry and I have created a massive open online course on the edX platform to help people think about going gameful and how to structure their curricula. And that is free and open to everybody. And so that's also an option where people could join that and pick and choose which modules apply to them and get some of what they need in terms of pedagogical support there. We have a ticketing system, and so in terms of, we try to reply and fix bugs pretty quickly. Kate, our lead developer, somehow survives on very little sleep. He's a hobby. So that's the sort of general answer to your question.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. So technical question.
Yep.
Where is GameCraft hosted?
GradeCraft, yeah, we're all hosted on AWS servers, and under sort of University of Michigan. So we actually pay through, well, now ITS is paying, but technical question is, we are on AWS. We've had very little downtime due to that fact. And there's a bunch of different ways we've thought about as we expand, sort of scaling up. People could pay to have GradeCraft on their own servers with their own subdomain. There's lots of permutations that we could do with that. With respect to student privacy, because we are not a corporation or even a nonprofit, and we're still existing within the University of Michigan, we are really strict about FERPA and access to the student data.
So there is an on-premise option now. In that option, will there be a different pricing model, or it adhere to the same one?
So yes, there is a different pricing model. It hasn't been completely confirmed with the entire team, but we're anticipating that, and let me actually just pull it up so that I don't mislead you with anything. But we're anticipating that it would essentially be $1,000 a term for, and by term we mean when there is new courses coming on board, at sort of up to 50 courses. And then if you're anticipating more than 50 courses, that's space where we would have to negotiate that contract based on what you need, because we just haven't gotten there as a unit or team or product, however you want to define us at the moment. So
kind of a follow-up question to the student data privacy. As you start to become a formal entity,
yep,
you have provisions for liability such as breach insurance. So if there is a breach, that you have the insurance to cover communications, credit checking, all that kind of stuff. Or
so that is, I will have to ask whether University of Michigan has that. So all of the funding comes through our Office of Tech Transfer. So that would be whether the university has that or not. My assumption is that they do, but I can easily check with our OTT person.
Okay, great.
Okay, so thinking about setting up separate servers, and so if you wanted to have us set up unique servers for your own instantiation, we're estimating that it would probably, based on our current server fees, and this could change based on sort of the scale, but $3,000 a month based on current server fees. Authentication setup would be a $1,000 one-time fee to get authentication set up if we're doing that on your behalf. A subdomain would be $500 to $1,500 per month. But if you wanted just the base access to where it's hosted on app.gradecraft.com using LTI and GradeCraft only authentication, then we're $1,000 a term. And that $1,000 is about the course turnover. So depending on how a given K-12 institution thinks about their grading periods and terms, it could be up to, I could envision $4,000 a year if you wanted a new setup every quarter, if you're on the quarter system. We anticipate most K-12 institutions might be at the $1,000 or $2,000 a year price point.
Okay. And technical question, is GradeCraft multi-tenant? So if you bring on another school district, do you have to deploy a whole nother instance, or does it support multiple tenants being in the same instance?
We support multiple tenants in the same instance.
Okay, great.
Other questions?
I think you answered most of my questions, at least at first blush. You were going to show the teacher interface?
Yep. Yeah. So let me pull that up and switch what we are. Actually, let me show. Just take a minute because I can't actually type my password and do other things at the same time. And I've got two-factor enabled, so just have to wait for the push. Okay. Hold on, video. There it is. Okay. New share. Okay. So here is a demo course from the instructor point of view. So this is everybody who gets a trial account ends up in this course. So the instructor dashboard is actually pretty similar to the student assignments due this week. You can see how many people predicted that they'll do that assignment and how many submissions have come through so far, point distribution for the course, and number of students at each of the grade levels. You can see that grading status has a little indicator of how many assignments you have to grade. Here, I don't know why unreleased grades is not popping down. Okay, we'll skip over that. But going into the assignments, you can see all of the assignments. You can edit its description. You can get a sense of points, rubric. And so if I go into my group project draft, we also support groups. I forgot to talk about that, where the student, the instructor sets up whether the instructor is determining the groups or whether the students can create their own groups, and the instructor has to approve them. Let's go into an essay assignment. So you can see all of the students who are enrolled, whether they've submitted an assignment, because this is a demo course nobody really has. Go and see your description downloads and your rubric. And so if I go into student and go to grade his assignment, I can click full credit, no credit for creativity, full credit for argumentation, and if I continue to scroll down, you can, or sorry, it's up at the top now. There have been a couple changes since I last did a demo. No I can see how many points have been allotted. So 3,000, I can keep going. And for each criterion, I can provide individualized feedback, and then I can also upload holistic feedback or type it in there, and then assign badges. And I can mark whether this is in progress or graded, and then submit grade or submit grade next. So the grading workflow is relatively intuitive. It auto-saves feedback so that you don't have to worry about losing that feedback. If you have to step away from the desk and you get logged out because of time, the system times you out, you'll still have all of that feedback.
Is there a communication subsystem that notifies teachers of submissions and students of grades?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you can go into your list of students, see all students. Students can create a pseudonym, which really only comes into play if you've enabled leaderboards. We're actually debating internally whether to make leaderboards available to K-12. We have seen some examples, and this is a dummy site, but of students creating pseudonyms like, why am I so bad at this? And some indications that the leaderboards may be really demotivating for some students. And so trying to figure out that balance of working with the instructor to give them agency over their course design and their pedagogy, of course, but also recognizing that we talk about our teaching as gameful as opposed to gamified. And partly we make that differentiation because some of the gamification or typical gamification features are not necessarily based on what we know about motivation. We know competition motivates some people, but can be really demotivating for others. And so striking that balance. So I say that we have leaderboards currently. They also can only be turned on at the section level, so that what we do know from the science of leaderboards is that if the leaderboard gets beyond 25 to 30 people, it's really demotivating for anybody below that, top 20 or so, because it doesn't feel actionable. I'll never get enough points to move above these 80 other students. So we've only enabled it if you've enabled sections. And even then, you still have the choice whether to turn on leaderboards or not. And
what kind of dual factor authentication? You mentioned that you were doing something with dual factor just now.
So that's because our university has enabled two-factor authentication, and since we're using Michigan's authentication system, when I logged in, I had to wait until I got my push notification from our two-factor provider.
Okay, so you don't have dual factor built into GradeCraft.
No, because it's not built into the basic GradeCraft authentication. But certainly, if we are linking to a single sign-on system that uses two-factor, it works. So analytics, that was the other thing I wanted to show. I'm going to switch to a real course for this, which it's an old course because I'm on beta. So let me pull up a real current course. Why am I having trouble finding? Sorry about this. Okay. These are all old sites from the creation of the new. Yeah, let me actually just go to. That way I know. Pardon me for a second. Okay. So I am now logged into myself in a real course. So if I go into analytics, instructors can see page views. They can also see the students who have not used the grade predictor. So given that it's the end of the term, it's good to see that, in fact, all of the students in this particular course have used the grade predictor. They've engaged with the system. We can look at team leader analytics. So Barry calls his graduate student instructors team leaders in this, and you can see their page views, how frequently they're logging in. and we can go into assignments and learn a little more about each of the individual assignments. So if I click on what makes games good for learning, 73 students participated. So because this was early in the term, there was actually students who attended the class who have since been pulled out of the system. So our students participated is 101%, which seems absurd, but makes sense given that this was the third day of class. And you can see that all of the students here actually got the 5,000 points. So the analytics are not particularly interesting for that.
So the page views up. So
Yes.
this was a online resource that they were engaging with, or?
No, actually the assignment page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The assignment page, okay.
So the way people sort of structure their course, if they're not hosting their content on a traditional learning management system, is to create either an event or an assignment and link to their readings or video that the students are supposed to watch within that event. We don't have a file repository as most people think of it, partly because there's enough options out there like Google Drive or Box where you can host everything and just link to it. So it's cheaper for us and built into tools that other people are already familiar with. We didn't want to have to recreate the wheel.
What kind of other analytics do you have besides page views and completed and not completed?
So if we go, this is, I'm choosing all of the wrong assignments. This is a problem with choosing other people's courses. So mostly it's grade distribution, number of people who predicted the assignment versus who actually did it.
Gotcha, okay.
So, and
again, you can't see performance prediction versus actual, and that's something that only a super user can see.
Correct. And we don't even have an interface. That is all
SQL stuff.
Downloadable from the back end for our research purposes. And I should say that we only do research on Michigan students. But we're open to potential research partnerships and certainly opening data to the people who have IRB approval from within institutions or organizations to do research on their own students. So if I look at assignment type analytics, I can see how many points students have earned in each of the assignment types, and just please pretend like you're not seeing real names.
Speaking of student data privacy.
Yeah. This is the one thing that we have not fully populated a dummy course so that we can show the analytics easily, but that's in the works for this summer. So you can see how many assignments within a category students have done. And then on the actual assignment, you can see how many predicted, how many grades were actually assigned. So you get a sense of, 68 people have predicted the last day of class, but apparently only 54 people showed up in class yesterday, which not too surprising given that if we look at the dashboard for this course, some students have already earned their A-. Most students are in the B range, and they have 2 big assignments due tomorrow that many of the students will submit. And so most of the students will be in the A range by tomorrow. And so they didn't need to attend that last day to, those 5,000 points didn't play that big of a role in their final grade.
Okay. I guess my last question, because I know we're on time.
Yeah.
What's the technology stack?
So it's Ruby on Rails.
Okay. And the backend database is?
MongoDB.
Mongo, okay.
And there's another database at the back end that, but Mongo is the primary one, I believe.
All right, great. Well, thank you for taking me through this. This has been very, very interesting, and I look forward to speaking again.
Yeah, so let us know what you feel like next steps are. If you want us to do demo for other people, or we'd also love your feedback on what, and I'll contact Zach directly, but also other than standards, standards-based grading, what feels like it's missing for a K-12 audience, because like I said, this is really designed based on the environment that we were building it for. But we've gotten a lot of interest from elsewhere, and so we want to try to meet the needs of those users as well.
Yeah, I think one of the next steps to explore, and Zach mentioned this a little bit earlier, and that's some of the things that are going on this summer with the feast. So
Yep.
There's professional development that happens. It's called the Teacher Feast.
Yep.
It's a good opportunity for you to kind of socialize this solution and actually get real feedback from teachers and whatnot. So it's one potential next.
Awesome. Great, thanks, Jat. It was lovely chatting with you, and don't hesitate to email me if you've got any other questions that come up before our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.